It was the way my mom laughed that really did it. Not the words. Those were bad enough. But that little snort she does when she's trying to be cruel and pretend she isn't. That smug, nose-crinkling laugh that says, "Oh, bless your heart, but you'll never be more than the family punchline, will you?" My name's Julian. I'm 34. And if you ask my family, I'm the guy who almost made it. That's the story they like to pass around, like a joke that's gotten funnier with every retelling. It used to sting. Now, it just fuels me. I wasn't always the black sheep. In fact, I was the golden child once, straight A student, mathlete, computer science prodigy. My parents bragged about me to their friends all through high school. But things shifted when I dropped out of grad school. I'd landed a once-in-a-lifetime offer from a now-public tech startup. I was 23, broke, but betting on myself. My dad told me I was throwing everything away. My mom cried like I'd announced I was joining a cult. And my sister? Grace just smirked. "Hope you like coding in basements," she said. Grace is 3 years younger than me and has always been, well, curated. Like a lifestyle blog come to life. Private school, Ivy League, 6-figure marketing job at a firm where they have kombucha on tap. My parents funded every inch of her path, from her semester in Paris to her first apartment. Meanwhile, I built mine from scratch. No handouts, no safety net. Just a few good decisions, a lot of bad ones, and a ridiculous work ethic. I made money. Quietly. I didn't flaunt it, didn't see the point. Maybe I should have. Because in my family, visibility is everything. You could be drowning in debt, but if you wore a pressed shirt and posted polished LinkedIn updates, you were a success. And if you were quietly investing in startups, flipping real estate under an LLC, and driving a beat-up Camry to keep overhead low, you were figuring things out. So yeah, that's the context. Now picture this, Sunday dinner. My parents host one every other week, which I usually skip. But this time Grace begged me to come. Said she had someone she wanted me to meet. I should have known better. Should have made an excuse and stayed home with my spreadsheets in silence. But I thought, why not? Be normal for a night. Their dining room hasn't changed in 20 years. Same heavy oak table, same mismatched candles that Mom insists are rustic. Everyone was already seated when I got there. Mom, Dad, Grace, and a guy I didn't recognize. Clean-shaven, slick hair, expensive blazer. He stood up when I walked in. "Julian, this is Mason." Grace beamed, voice sweet as syrup. "Mason, my brother." We shook hands. His grip was firm. He looked like the kind of guy who referred to himself as a finance bro, ironically, but also kind of meant it. Dinner started okay. Small talk, wine, Grace recounting some story about a pitch deck she made that totally slayed. I kept mostly quiet, pushing peas around my plate, answering questions when asked, until Mason turned to me with a charming smile and said, "So Julian, what do you do?" There was a pause, the kind that feels like someone pressed a mute button on the whole room. And then my mom laughed. Not a ha-ha how funny laugh. The kind I mentioned before. That snort. That sharp little bark that seems to say, he has no idea what he's doing with his life. "Oh," she said, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "Let's not ruin the appetite." Grace didn't miss a beat. "Just say you're figuring things out again," she added with a giggle. Dad chuckled too, the kind of forced laugh that tries to soften the cruelty but doesn't quite stick the landing. They all laughed. I didn't. I just nodded, took a bite of mashed potatoes, and stared at my plate like it was suddenly fascinating. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. I went home early that night. But I didn't sulk. I didn't spiral. I didn't yell or text Grace a passive-aggressive essay about boundaries. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into the dashboard of a holding company I quietly built, and approved the wire transfer for $500,000. The down payment on a property I'd been watching for years. The one my parents had been trying, and failing, to buy for over a decade. A gorgeous 3-story house in a gentrifying neighborhood they claimed would be their retirement dream home. They could never quite get the financing right. But I could. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I scheduled a brunch for the following Sunday. Texted Grace, Mom, Dad, just a casual catch-up. On me. Bring Mason. They all RSVP'd yes. They had no idea what was coming. And when they showed up, all dressed up and ready to smile through a meal they expected me to pay for, I greeted them at the front door of my new house, wearing a blazer, holding a manila folder in one hand, and a rejection letter in the other. My mom blinked. Julian, whose house is this? I smiled, and that's when I handed her the letter. But let me rewind a little. Because before we get to that scene, the brunch, the stunned faces, the fallout, there's more you need to know. Like the real reason I'd been keeping my success a secret. What happened with the first business I built? Why my parents never trusted me again after that one phone call in 2015. And why I decided, after all these years, that this was the moment to pull the pin. You want revenge? Let's start with the betrayal that lit the match. Let's go back. Back before the mashed potatoes, before the silence, before the laughter at my expense. Back to the years when I still believed being quiet and competent would earn respect. When I thought keeping my head down and working hard would somehow make up for not playing their game. It's funny how slowly disrespect builds. It doesn't hit you all at once. It's not a slap, it's a slow drip. A comment here, a joke there, a look that lingers too long when someone asks what you've been up to. For me, it started the year after I dropped out of grad school. I joined a tiny team building back-end infrastructure for a cloud-based analytics tool. Sexy, I know. We were 6 people in a room with peeling paint and a whiteboard full of code scribbles, running on caffeine and cheap pizza. No salary, just equity. I didn't care. I was obsessed. It was the first time in my life I felt like I was building something that could matter. The company got acquired 2 years later. My cut, after taxes, just over $1.2 million. I didn't throw a party. Didn't buy a Tesla. I didn't even upgrade my apartment. I just moved into a slightly nicer one-bedroom and started learning everything I could about investing, real estate, angel funding. I opened LLCs, talked to lawyers, made mistakes, lost money, made it back, kept my circle small. But none of that mattered to my family. As far as they were concerned, I'd quit grad school, fizzled out, and never recovered. Because I didn't walk around flashing a Rolex or posting inspirational LinkedIn quotes about hustle culture, they assumed I was drifting. Meanwhile, Grace was rising like a champagne bubble. She got a job at a boutique marketing firm straight out of Colombia. 2 months later, she was promoted. A year after that, they flew her to Cannes. She posted filtered selfies on yachts with captions like, "So grateful for this journey," and racked up likes from everyone in the family. My mom printed out one of her posts and put it on the fridge. I wish I was kidding. Every Sunday dinner became some variation of Grace's latest triumph. And Julian, you'll get there eventually. It didn't matter that Grace still asked Dad for help covering her rent every few months. Didn't matter that I paid mine in full, on time, plus the mortgage on a duplex I never even mentioned. They were looking at optics. Grace was shiny. I was not. But I let it slide. For years, I kept showing up, biting my tongue, letting the jabs roll off. I thought I was being mature. I thought I was choosing peace. Until the day they stole from me. Not literally. Not in the way you might expect. No one emptied my bank account or forged a signature. But what they took was worse than money. It was trust. And dignity. It started with my cousin, Alex. Alex and I were close growing up. He was like a little brother to me. We played video games together, built Lego cities, shared dumb jokes that made no sense. He was an academic, struggled through school, but he had a good heart. Always looked up to me. A few years back, Alex called me in a panic. His fiancée had just left him. He'd been laid off. He was crashing on a friend's couch and had maxed out 2 credit cards trying to keep up with bills. I asked him what he needed. He said, "I don't know. Just help." So I helped. Quietly. I gave him $5,000. No questions asked. Told him it wasn't a loan, just a gift to get him back on his feet. He cried. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my parents. A month later, he got a job doing warehouse logistics. He texted me updates every few weeks. I was proud of him. Then came Grace's engagement. She met Mason during some networking retreat in Aspen. Within 6 months, he was down on one knee in front of a drone camera, proposing on a cliffside. Of course it went viral. Of course Mom cried. Of course Dad offered to pay for the wedding before they even asked. They set the date for the following summer and booked the most ridiculous venue I've ever seen. Some converted winery with chandeliers made from antique decanters. Grace asked me to be a groomsman. Not the best man. That was Mason's college roommate who once got arrested for starting a bar fight over karaoke. But sure, I said yes. I even offered to help financially. I didn't want to. God knows they weren't shy about flaunting their spending. But I thought, maybe this is a peace offering. Maybe this is how I rebuild things. I told Grace I could contribute up to $15,000 for the honeymoon or whatever extras they needed. She smiled, hugged me, and said I was surprisingly generous. Weeks passed. No thank you. No update. Until one day, I noticed a strange charge on one of my business accounts. A withdrawal for $8,500 labeled Event Deposit, Grace J. and M. My stomach sank. I checked again. The transaction had been made using a virtual card I'd issued to Alex months ago, back when he needed help and didn't have his own card. I'd forgotten to revoke it. It had a low limit. I figured it was harmless. Apparently not. I called Alex. No answer. I texted, "Did you use the card I gave you? For Grace's wedding?" He replied with a single word. "Sorry." That was it. I called Grace. She picked up on the second ring, all chirpy. "Hey big bro. What's up? I need to ask you something," I said slowly. "Did you ask Alex to use my business card for your wedding?" Silence. Then, well, technically, I didn't ask him. He offered. "You knew it was linked to my account." Another pause. "He said it was one of your business cards, and I figured, what's the big deal? You said you wanted to help. I said I'd give you 15 grand. Not have someone steal from one of my companies." "Oh my God, Julian. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like it hurt you." That line. It's not like it hurt you. I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't about money. It was about principle. About the years of disregard. The dismissal. The way they saw my success as a myth until it suited them. I hung up. 10 minutes later, I revoked every virtual card I'd ever issued. An hour later, I locked down every business account. Changed passwords. Added two-factor. Everything. That night, I got a call from my mom. I heard there was some mix-up with Grace's wedding payment, she said, voice dripping with faux concern. "You really didn't need to overreact like this. You know how tight things are with the venue." I didn't say anything. She sighed. "Sweetheart, you're not struggling like Alex or Grace. Can't you just let it go?" That was when I realized they didn't see me as family. Not really. Not the way they saw Grace. I was a resource. A wallet with legs. The weird older brother with the mysterious startups and no real job title who could be milked when necessary and ignored the rest of the time. So I didn't let it go. I made a list that night. Every slight. Every time I was laughed at. Every loan never repaid. Every fake apology. Every holiday dinner where I was the punchline. And I started planning. Not a tantrum. Not a big, fiery confrontation. No yelling, no ultimatums. Just chess. Quiet, precise moves. Like buying the property they'd been trying to acquire for years. The one my mom used to point out every time we drove past it. "One day, that'll be ours," she'd say. The perfect retirement house. She even submitted an offer once. Got rejected. Financing issues. They tried again last year. Still no dice. I'd been watching it. Not to buy it. Not originally. But now it felt poetic. The owners were still interested in selling. They remembered the previous lowball offer from my parents. I didn't lowball. I paid asking, in cash, through one of my LLCs. They didn't even know I'd done it. Not yet. Because first, I wanted them to underestimate me one more time. Hence the dinner. Hence the laughter. Hence the "let's not ruin the appetite." I took it all in. Let them have their little moment. Let them think I was still the same passive Julian they could mock and manipulate. And then, a week later, I scheduled brunch. Not at a restaurant. At my new house. Theirs, once upon a dream. And when they pulled into the driveway, wearing polite smiles and brunch attire, they still didn't get it. Not until I opened the door. Not until I handed my mom the envelope. Not until she opened it, unfolded the paper, and saw her own rejected mortgage application stapled to a welcome letter from my holding company. The look on her face? That was worth every second of quiet I'd endured. But that moment, the reveal, that was just the beginning. Because revenge isn't about a single blow. It's about the long game. And I was just getting started. I didn't used to think of myself as someone who needed revenge. I used to think I was above all that. For the longest time, I thought if I just kept my head down, stayed quiet, worked hard, built something real, eventually people would see me for who I was. Not the dropout. Not the failed genius. Just someone who made it in his own way. Someone who didn't need to scream for attention. But I was wrong. Because for years, I waited. I waited for my parents to ask how things were going. Not out of politeness, but out of actual curiosity. I waited for Grace to stop seeing me as her fallback option. The brother who was only useful when things got messy. I waited for even one moment of genuine respect from the people who were supposed to know me best. It never came. What had come were the jokes, the passive-aggressive comments, the loaded questions, the borrowed money that never got paid back, the years of family events where I was treated like the cautionary tale. But I didn't become who I am because of them. I became who I am in spite of them. And to explain how, we need to rewind. Way past the brunch, past the betrayal, back to a time when I truly thought I'd lost everything. Let me tell you about 2015. The real rock bottom. Not the awkward family dinner kind of low. I'm talking about the kind of low where you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, your heart pounding, because you're not sure if you can make rent. The kind where your savings account is a joke, your fridge is mostly condiments, and every missed call might be a debt collector. It was 6 months after the startup I worked for got acquired. Everyone assumed I was set for life after that. And yeah, I did cash out with 7 figures, on paper. But I was young. Stupid. I didn't realize that half of it was tied up in restricted stock that wouldn't fully vest for years. I burned through too much too fast, thinking the next big payout was right around the corner. I invested in a tech project that tanked. I loaned money to a former coworker who ghosted me. Worst of all, I put down a deposit on a property development deal that turned out to be a scam. Suddenly, my $1 million future was reduced to a few $1,000 and a panic attack that wouldn't quit. That's when the calls started. From my dad. Not asking how I was doing, but telling me what a mistake I'd made. You walked away from a PhD to chase some Silicon Valley pipe dream, he said. And now what? You expect us to bail you out? I never asked them for money. Not once. But I did call. Once, because I was scared. Because I thought maybe just hearing a calm voice would help. That call ended with my mom saying, "Well, maybe this will teach you some humility." Click. That was the moment I knew I was on my own. So I rebuilt. Not all at once. It was slow. Messy. I took freelance coding gigs for embarrassing rates. Spent nights debugging finance apps for people who thought agile meant fast. I slept 4 hours a night, drank too much coffee, stopped talking to most people I knew. And I learned. I learned how to manage contracts, how to spot scammers, how to protect my assets, how to take calculated risks instead of dumb ones. I incorporated my first LLC in 2016 and used it to broker data consulting gigs between small firms and independent coders. By 2017, I had 2 contractors working under me and a client base that respected me, not because I was flashy, but because I delivered. It was during this time that I bought my first property, a 2-unit rental in a transitional neighborhood. Ugly on the outside, solid bones on the inside. I lived in one unit and rented the other. Fixed it up myself on weekends, watching YouTube tutorials on drywall and plumbing. Ate microwave meals on a milk crate while building spreadsheets for the next investment. That duplex cash flowed within 6 months. I refinanced it after a year and used the equity to buy a triplex. Then another. Then I started structuring everything under layered LLCs for liability protection. By 2020, I was quietly managing 9 doors across 3 neighborhoods, with tenants I knew by name and reserves stashed away for every property. And still, I said nothing. Not to Grace. Not to my parents. Not to the cousin who owed me money or the aunt who always asked if I'd found a real job yet. Why? Because part of me still hoped the results would speak for themselves. Spoiler, they didn't. I remember one Thanksgiving, 2019. I'd driven 5 hours to be there. My mom sat me next to a folding chair and asked Grace's boyfriend at the time, some guy named Taylor, if he had any career tips for me. He worked in social media. I built infrastructure systems that powered analytics for multi-million-dollar companies. But sure, let's hear what Taylor has to say about success. That night, I sat in my car for 30 minutes before driving home. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just stared at the dashboard and thought, if they don't see it now, they never will. So I stopped hoping. And I started planning. I built a second company. This one fully remote, leveraging a team of niche developers overseas to build custom integrations for e-commerce businesses. It was scalable, profitable, boring in all the right ways. I bought more properties. I turned down a $3.2 million acquisition offer in 2021 because I didn't need the liquidity. And all through it, I said nothing. Until Grace stole from me. That was the crack in the dam. The moment I realized silence wasn't peace. It was permission. So I stopped being silent. First, by buying the house. That was symbolic. Yeah, but it was also strategic. Prime location. Undervalued. And my parents had already done all the legwork by trying to buy it twice. I knew exactly what renovations it needed, what the zoning rules were, and how to maximize its value. Then I planned the brunch. I didn't tell them it was my house. I just said, found a cool new brunch spot. You'll love it. Sunday at noon. Don't be late. I spent the morning of the brunch making sure everything was perfect. Coffee brewed. Fruit tray chilled. Music low. I had 3 envelopes on the table, each containing a copy of the rejected mortgage application my parents submitted, along with a purchase letter from my company and a business card clipped to the front. When they arrived, Mom was the first one through the door. "This place is stunning," she said, eyes wide. "Whose is it?" I smiled, and I handed her the envelope. Grace was behind her, Mason in tow. He glanced around, visibly impressed. "This yours, Julian?" I just nodded. Grace blinked. "Wait, you bought this house?" Mom opened the envelope. Her face went pale. She recognized the letterhead immediately. I didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Dad finally stepped inside, frowning. "What's going on?" I walked past them, into the kitchen, and poured myself a coffee. Then I turned, leaned against the counter, and said, "Brunch is served." And that was the moment the game changed. That was the moment they realized the version of me they kept mocking no longer existed. But the rise wasn't about money. It was about choice. I chose to stop begging for their approval. I chose to stop shrinking so they could feel big. I chose to build something real, not because they believed in me, but because I did. And now? Now I had their full attention. But what I did next, that's the part they never saw coming. Because revenge isn't loud. It's deliberate. And mine had only just begun. The thing about revenge is it isn't loud. It's patient. It's that second breath you take before reacting. It's every insult you ever swallowed, compressed into a plan that doesn't shout, it waits. And I've been waiting a long time. The brunch was just the first act. It was never meant to be the knockout blow, just the opening bell. The real setup started after they walked out of that house with silence on their lips and confusion in their eyes. Let me walk you through what happened next. After the brunch, I didn't reach out. No calls. No texts. Not even a thank you for coming. I knew they were stewing, especially Grace. I imagined the conversations in their living room. Mom going quiet, Dad pacing, Grace pacing louder. Mason probably whispering. Did you know he could afford something like that? They didn't know. That was the point. I didn't build my success to show off. I built it because I was sick of being powerless. But now that I had power, I realized I'd never actually used it. Not really. Until now. The first thing I did was dig deeper into my parents' failed offers on the house. I called the real estate agent they'd worked with. He remembered them immediately. Nice people, but their financing always fell through. He was surprised when I introduced myself as the new owner. "Oh, that's funny," he said. "Your mom called me the day after the house went off market. Said she had a better offer. I had to tell her it sold in full cash." She sounded stunned. I smiled. "Yeah, I think it hit her harder than expected." I asked him for copies of the offer letters they'd submitted. "Just for reference," I said. What I didn't tell him was that I planned to frame them. I had a guest room in the new house, technically a den in the listing, but I turned it into what I now call the Office of Inconvenient Truths. Framed on the wall, their 2 rejected offers. Their mortgage pre-approval denial. A printout of the public deed showing my holding company as the owner. It wasn't for them. It was for me. Because I wanted to remember how easily power can be taken if you forget who you are. The second step in the setup was Alex. My cousin. The one who used my business card without permission. We hadn't spoken since the incident. I knew Grace had thrown him under the bus when I called her out. Said he offered to pay for something he had no business touching. But I didn't want revenge on Alex. I wanted clarity. So I invited him to coffee. Neutral ground. He showed up late, nervous, hands in his hoodie pockets like a teenager caught smoking. "Thanks for meeting me," he mumbled. I nodded. "You're lucky I didn't file charges." His face went pale. "I didn't mean," Grace said. "She said it was fine." I held up a hand. "I know what she said. I want to know what you think." He looked around like someone might be listening. "Honestly, I thought it was weird. She told me you were helping pay for the wedding and that you gave me the card as a backup. I figured, if you're loaded, what's a few grand, right?" I tilted my head. "Do you think I'm loaded?" Alex hesitated. "I mean, yeah, but you never said anything. You drive that beat-up Camry. I thought you were still struggling." I exhaled. Exactly. Alex wasn't malicious. just misinformed. And Grace had weaponized that. Before we left, I handed him an envelope. Inside, an invoice. $8,500 plus interest. He blinked. You want me to pay this? No, I said. I want you to frame it. Put it somewhere you'll see every day. Because that's the price of not asking questions before you swipe someone else's card. He nodded, quietly. No argument. And then I walked away. One thread tied. Dozens more to go. Next came Grace. I didn't go to her directly. That would be too easy. Instead, I reached out to a friend of hers, Olivia, someone I'd met a few times at Grace's parties. Olivia worked in real estate branding and occasionally did consulting for boutique agencies. Over drinks, I asked if she knew anything about Mason's current employment. She raised an eyebrow. You mean unemployment? Oh, apparently Mason's fintech startup had crashed 6 months ago, burned through VC money like a bonfire. He'd been scrambling ever since, living off Grace's salary and telling everyone he was between rounds. Interesting. I thanked Olivia, bought her another drink, and went home thinking. Because Grace had built her whole identity around perfection. Her job, her fiancé, her Instagrammable life. But I knew the cracks were spreading, and all I had to do was wait. But waiting wasn't enough. I needed something to move the needle. So I started building a paper trail. I compiled every text, every email, every receipt showing Grace using or directing others to use my resources without consent. I pulled transaction histories, Slack DMs from contractors she borrowed during her wedding planning phase, even a PDF of the catering invoice that mysteriously got billed to a company I own through a shared vendor. All of it went into a neat folder titled Family Write-Offs. Because it wasn't just theft. It was arrogance. Grace assumed I'd never notice. Or if I did, that I'd never say anything. But she was wrong. And the final piece? The business dinner. A friend of mine, Sarah, runs a mid-sized marketing agency downtown. She's sharp, connected, and owed me a favor. I told her I had a candidate she should meet for a potential branding project, a mid-level marketer looking to pivot into consulting. I gave her Grace's number and watched the trap unfold. Grace showed up to the meeting thinking it was a job offer. She brought her best blazer, her power smile, and a portfolio of recycled campaigns. Sarah kept it professional, polite, but cold. Halfway through the dinner, she asked Grace how she managed budgets. Oh, I always find creative ways to make things work, Grace said, sipping wine. Sometimes I even leverage friends or family resources to close a gap. Sarah smiled. Interesting choice of words. Grace paused. Excuse me. Sarah slid a folder across the table. Inside, the catering invoice. A screenshot of the card charge. The wedding planner's email thanking Julian for his contribution. Grace's face, I'm told, went white. Sarah leaned back. I think we're done here. Grace called me that night. Angry. How dare you set me up? I didn't raise my voice. You set yourself up. I just made sure someone was watching this time. You're pathetic, she hissed. Just because you bought a house doesn't mean you're better than everyone. I almost laughed. Grace, I've never wanted to be better than anyone. I just want to be left alone. But since that's apparently not possible, I've decided to start participating in this little family theater. You think you're clever, she snapped. But you're just bitter. No, I said quietly. I'm free. Click. No yelling. No drama. Just truth. And once the truth was out, the silence that followed was glorious. But I wasn't done. Because I still had one more card to play. One more setup. One final checkmate. And it would require everything I'd learned. Every lesson. Every scar. Every rejection and insult. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about showing them. Showing them who you became when they stopped looking. And I was about to show them everything. You've been with me through the setup, the planning, the slow burn revelations, the soft power plays that nudged the cracks in my family wide open. But this part? This is where everything converged. Where years of being underestimated became the engine for one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Let me walk you through how it all ended. After Grace's ambush dinner with Sarah, the one that shattered her illusion of invincibility, she went radio silent. I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. Not a word. I imagined she was scrambling, trying to recover from the embarrassment, trying to control the narrative. That's what Grace does when her image starts to crumble. She performs damage control, not introspection. My parents, on the other hand, pretended like nothing had happened. They didn't bring up the house. They didn't mention the brunch. They didn't call, text, or show up at my door. At first, I thought maybe they were waiting for an apology, that I'd somehow humiliated the family by demonstrating what I'd accomplished without them. But the longer the silence stretched, the more I realized they weren't waiting for anything. They were just avoiding reality, and I wasn't going to let them. So I wrote an email, one I'd been drafting in my head for months. It was short, precise, unemotional. Subject: ownership and closure. Hi Mom, Dad. I hope you're both well. I wanted to formally inform you that as of last month, I became the legal owner of the Chestnut Ridge property you attempted to purchase in 2017 and again in 2022. I paid in full, in cash, under my holding company, Ridge and Echo Investments. This isn't meant as an announcement to provoke or hurt. It's simply an acknowledgement that I've spent the past decade building something real, despite your doubts, despite the jokes, and despite being treated as the cautionary tale of the family. I'll be living in the property part-time and using the rest for a short-term rental project. There's no obligation for you to interact with it or with me, unless you choose to. But I will no longer tolerate being disrespected, dismissed, or used. Grace's unauthorized use of my business account for her wedding expenses has been documented and handled privately. I do not intend to pursue legal action, but I reserve the right to change my mind should further boundaries be crossed. If you'd ever like to have an honest conversation, as adults, without mockery, I'm open to that. But until then, I wish you all the best. Julian. I hit send. Then I blocked them on everything, temporarily. Not out of spite, but to give myself peace. The kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop waiting for the people who hurt you to say, I'm sorry. Then I turned my attention to the final stage of my plan. See, that property? It wasn't just a house. It was leverage. Because my parents didn't just like the house. They needed it. Over the years, they'd built a narrative around it. That it would be their retirement home. That they'd gut the kitchen and host grandkids for Sunday dinners. My mom had a Pinterest board. My dad had blueprints. They used to drive past it and say, that's where we'll finally breathe easy. And now I owned it. And they couldn't stand it. A week after my email, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my dad. His voice was tight, tense. Julian, listen, your mother's been a little shaken up. We weren't expecting all of this. We've been thinking, maybe there's a way we can work something out with the house. If it's about money, we can talk terms. Let's be reasonable here. I listened to that voicemail 5 times. Then I did something very deliberate. I printed it, framed it, and hung it right next to the framed rejection letters. Then I drafted my response. Hi, Dad. Thanks for reaching out. This isn't about money. It never was. But if you're still interested in the property, I do have an option that might suit you. I'm converting the upstairs into a luxury short-term rental suite. I'd be happy to reserve it for you and Mom at the family rate, for $150 a night, 2-night minimum. It comes with a complimentary welcome basket, fresh linens, and a printed copy of your previous mortgage denial in the guest binder. Let me know if you'd like to book. Warmly, Julian. I never heard back. From him, or from my mom. But that was okay. Because revenge isn't about hearing, you were right. It's about not needing to hear it anymore. As for Grace, oh, she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. 2 months after the dinner disaster, she texted me. No apology. No explanation. Just, are you serious about pressing charges for the card thing? I didn't respond. She texted again an hour later. Julian, come on. Don't ruin my life over a misunderstanding. And then, we're family. That one made me laugh. Because family was the word they always used when they needed something, never when they gave it. So I sent one final reply. We were family. Now we're just people who shared DNA. Then I forwarded the invoice again. This time, to both her personal and work email. She paid it. Quietly. No memo. No note. I don't think she's ever been more afraid of me than in that moment. Not because I was threatening, but because I was done. You want to know the funny part? The moment I stopped chasing respect, I found it. Not from them, but from people who actually mattered. Tenants who thanked me for fixing things on time. Contractors who knew I'd never stiff them. Clients who sent referrals because I treated them like partners, not paychecks. I became someone people trusted. Not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. And now? Now I live the kind of quiet life that used to make my family roll their eyes. I don't post on social media. I don't show off. I don't try to prove anything. But I do host brunch. Every other Sunday, I invite friends over to the house. We sit on the sunlit porch where my mom once dreamed she'd retire. We drink coffee. We eat pancakes. We laugh. And every once in a while, a car slows down in front of the house, just for a second, before speeding off again. I like to think it's them, driving past the life they could have been part of, if only they'd treated me like more than a disappointment. And as I sip my coffee, surrounded by people who chose me without obligation, I think, this is the best kind of revenge. Not burning bridges, but building something so beautiful. They have to watch it from the outside. Forever.